Coach Paul Settles, thank you for joining me on the ITA College Tennis Coaches podcast.
Thanks, David. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's we've obviously we didn't have a relationship prior to me joining the ITA, but we've been spending a lot more time with each other over the last few years. You've joined the board, you've been on our operating committee, got to see your team win the D3 National Indoor Championships a few weeks ago. So congratulations to you and your team. That was fun to be out there and see that. But you have lots going on, not just as a tennis coach, but you have lots of other things here that I want to get to today. So you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Thanks. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of course. So you are now a professor of leadership studies at CMS. What is one thing that you've taken from either your research for the class, the teachings, any class discussions that you actually apply to your role as a head tennis coach?
Yeah, so this is something I've taken on in the last 10 years. A very sort of understanding faculty here at Claremont McKenna College who recognized that I could do this. So it's been kind of a great add to the coaching that I do. And I think to answer your question, Dave, I would say it's hard to pin one thing that I've learned over the years. But if I could cheat and answer it with two or three, then I
Sure.
will.
More the better.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that leadership is learned, right? We're not born with it. So John Wooden, the famous UCLA basketball coach, has this quote where he says, "Everything I've learned through coaching and leadership is through listening, observation, study, and trial and error along the way." And that's something I just try to live by day to day because I think, for us to be at our best in this profession, we have to take a posture of lifetime learning, and we have to be really aware of who we're interacting with and who we're listening to, observing, studying. So it's an ongoing process, this learning about leadership, and it's practicing, it's experimenting with it. Um, so yeah, I think that's been a big thing that I've taken from the class itself. I think there's a couple other things. One of the guys who I study in the class is a current rugby coach at Cal. His name is Jack Clark. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
Peter Wright, the former Cal tennis coach, connected me with Jack, and we had him in
Hmm.
our class a couple weeks ago. And Jack defines leadership as making those around you better and more productive. And
Hmm.
I think that's another thing. It's very simple, but it's a great concept to be able to apply to a college tennis team, to a college coaching staff, someone in your position. Um, and it's such a simple concept insofar as, we can all look for ways in which to make others around us better and more productive.
Hmm.
And they don't have to be in sort of these traditional kind of leadership ways that we think of, great speeches or, you know, motivating locker room talks or, shrewd tactical decisions, things like that. There's lots of very simple ways that we can do that. So I would say those are the two things that sort of motivate me as a coach and leader is this reminder of a simple definition of leadership, and also the fact that I have to continue to focus on learning and studying if I'm going to continue to improve at this.
Hmm. For sure. And this next question, Paul, you can define success any which way you want and would love to hear your thoughts on it. But what do you believe to be the key leadership attributes of successful head tennis coaches?
Yeah, so I think, another thing that I've taken from the classes that I've been teaching here at CMC is a way to evaluate leaders through five leadership skills, right? So the difference between attributes and skills. Attributes we look at as being inherent. It may be the tone of your voice or the poise that you have in a certain situation.
Mm.
But a skill is a real action-based competency. And so I like to evaluate leaders in terms of five of these action-based competencies. The first is vision, the next is motivation, then communication, adapting to change, and finally managing crises. Um, so when I think about success, I think about how has a leader kind of dealt with each of these leadership skills.
Hmm.
Um, we live in a society where we want to evaluate everything on wins and losses. It's all outcome and results based. But when you break it into these five very specifically defined skills, it kind of changes the paradigm on what really matters. And it's very rare that you'll find a leader that is really good in all five of these areas.
Mm.
Uh, but if you can nail, three or four of them, I think it can be really, really impactful to your followers and stakeholders. So in the coaching realm, we're especially I think at the small college level where I'm at, we're almost forced into a CEO role, right? Where we've kind of do a little bit of everything. There's
Hmm.
there's the on-court piece, but there's also sort of a human resources function, right? Where we're hiring and firing, whether that's student athletes or coaching staff or
Hmm.
whatever. There's managing a budget, there's promoting the program, there's marketing, finance, human resources. The coaching is just one small piece of that. But when you take these five skills, it allows you to sort of look at all the things you do as a coach, CEO through these different lenses.
Mm.
Mhm.
That's really helpful, Paul. And in your classes, then, as you're having discussions about these skills, have any of your students or yourself identified leaders throughout history, maybe not just in the sports world, but maybe it can be in the sports world that tick all five of those? Is there anybody that you can give as an example?
Almost never. I mean, it's
Really?
really, really rare that somebody can tick all five. In my class, we start with a study of John Wooden. That's why I had the Wooden quote handy.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say he comes really, really close.
Mm.
His work with the Pyramid of Success, demonstrated incredible vision. It's a way to motivate. It's a great communication tool. Um, where Wooden is often thought of not having been tested would have been in the area of crisis management. But we have to remember that he coached in an era of incredible social unrest in the 60s and 70s in this country.
Mm.
So he really did go through that. So I think that's not a tennis example. I know this is a tennis crowd, but that's a great example of a leader who I think comes really close. I think on the tennis side, the leader who probably is closest in all five of those, off the top of my head, is probably Arthur Ashe.
Mm.
And I think Ashe is one of those rare leaders who, had an incredible moral compass, was an intellectual, right,
Hmm.
and an elite athlete, and to have those three and encompass the leadership skills that I mentioned before is pretty spectacular.
Mm. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, thanks for providing those examples, and I think most of our coaches are familiar with both of those
Mhm.
examples, but maybe some of our
Mhm.
younger coaches may not have been exposed, especially to John Wooden and some of his books and teachings. Maybe they've seen it on their scrolls, a quote or two, but it would be good for them to dip into some of his writings. So, especially the Pyramid of Success, and just familiarize themselves with that. But so before your time at Claremont, Paul, you were director of player service at ATP, and so and you can tell us a little bit about how you ended up, moving over to college coaching, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But what did you learn during your time there, whether it's from the business side of things, being around top players, top coaches, top agents, top tournament directors? Was there anything there that you learned that you believe helped you make a successful transition to the college coaching world?
Well, I can remember the day that I accepted the job at at CMS in Claremont Mudd Scripps, and I had this great sense of panic back in 2003 because I thought, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? I know nothing about coaching. Um, I hadn't coached a day in my life, but I had spent the last 15 years, as you said, as director of player services of the ATP and been around the very best coaches in the world and the very best players. And my career at the ATP started, as Connors's uh, career was winding down. McEnroe was sort of in his prime.
Mm,
Then I got to go through the stage with Courier and Chang and Agassi and Sampras. I worked,
mm,
10 years with those guys and really got to know them and their habits. And then at the very end of my career, as I was leaving and transitioning to college tennis, that was Nadal and Federer starting out. So like this incredible, really
mm,
3 generation stretch, and to see the game evolve over those 15 years, the professional game was um, an incredible study in professionalism. And I would say the one thing that I took into college coaching was this idea of what the best players in the world and best coaches do, and what are those habits, and what makes them so good. And you know, I think some of the obvious things are, hey, the top pros are better at managing their sleep and hydrating and taking care of their diet. Those are probably more understood and obvious, but some things like at a professional tournament, a player has an hour to practice because that's all he's allocated.
mhm,
How do he and his coach allocate, and how do they use that hour to the greatest efficiency?
mm,
And to go out and watch how they practice, how they move, how they use every minute out there of that hour when that's all they've got, was an incredible lesson for me in just being efficient with whatever resources you have and trying to be as professional as possible. So I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me was just observation and seeing how the best in the world did it.
mm,
Translating that to a Division III college tennis program at times was challenging, of course, but I think it carried with it some real credibility because it was coming from the Pro Tour.
sure. And so, why did it make sense for you, Paul, to transition into college coaching at that time of your life? I often get questions from coaches about, transitioning into college coaching, but also transitioning out and going through the pros and cons and what is the right move, or going from one college to another. And I think, those are huge decisions in our lives. I mean, it changes completely the direction of where we're going and where we're living, and how does it impact our families and stuff like that. But yeah, can you take us through kind of your thinking at that point in your life?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It was a real personal decision. I loved my job, loved working at the ATP, and traveling a lot. I mean, I was traveling about 250 days a year,
Oh my.
um, which was a lot. I mean, it was like having a pro player's schedule on steroids,
Hmm.
and there were some trips that I would take. I can remember I took a trip in 1990, 91 when I met my wife, where I started in the island of Palermo in Italy and ended in Moscow. And in between, I'd worked 10 tournaments without a day off. So, it's that kind of a schedule.
Yeah.
And having just worked whatever, six national indoor team tournaments,
Right.
it's not like those days are 9 to 5.
Right.
Those
Right.
are 18-hour days.
Yeah.
So, there was a little bit of, hey, this is a lot. And by the way, I've got a wife who I really care for at home and three kids under the age of 5.
Mm.
So from on a personal level, I had to make a decision about, hey, what was more important? And clearly, my marriage and my family were more important. So I said, hey, I'm gonna take this leap, look for the next thing, whatever it is, and just consider this like a fantastic chapter in my career. And that's exactly what it's been. And I have not regretted it for a nanosecond. I mean, it's been the greatest decision I've ever made. And one of the things that I love about transitioning from the ATP, which was a purely service-based role, we're out to serve the top players and, well, all the players,
Hmm.
and also serve tournaments as well. To be in a coaching realm, now you get to lead a team and actually cheer for somebody. I spent 15 years sitting on my hands, not being able to cheer for the players who I secretly really liked and wanted to win. And
Hmm.
now I get to lead 11 or 12 guys and actively cheer, and it's okay.
Yeah. And did you have to move, Paul? Were you guys based in Southern California at the time, or?
No, we were based in Jacksonville,
Oh,
the ATP
sure.
headquarters in Ponte Vedra Beach. So we were there. But again, I mean, I was on the road, most of the year. So not a
Yeah.
lot of time spent there.
So why Claremont? Just the job was open at the right time, or there was some connection, or you're familiar
Yeah.
with the area?
So I grew up in Southern California, about 30 miles west of here in Glendale,
Hmm.
and I had grown up playing junior tennis, quite a bit of junior tennis in Claremont. And in fact, the longtime Claremont coach, Hank Krieger, his son Jeff, and I were really good friends growing up. When I went to college, I went to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Jeff went to Swarthmore College, so we remained friends and actually competitors throughout college as well.
Hmm.
So it all sort of came full circle. I was at the U.S. Open in 2003 at the end of the tournament, sort of looking at the NCAA website, and noticed this job was open at Claremont, and thought, ah, that's a place that I'm quite familiar with, that I grew up in and played tennis, and know a bit about their history. So that sort of started it.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. All right, very good. So can you take us
hmm.
through then your evolution as a coach? I didn't realize you hadn't coached at all before signing up as a college coach. Obviously, a very high level player, but um, can you maybe tell us how you were a better coach 10 years in, and then how you are maybe a better coach now compared to 10, 11 years ago?
Yeah, so the fact that I had no coaching experience whatsoever, I think it's worth a few seconds here. One, I had an athletic director who was an incredible visionary. He recognized a background in professional sport and thought, okay, he hasn't coached, but he's seen and he's been around the best. So
Hmm.
he took a real risk in hiring me. Um, and I'll forever be thankful for him taking that risk. And again, I think that's a great leadership lesson in both vision and initiative. Sometimes we have to take those risks to really reap rewards. I think he's happy with his decision 21 years later. I hope so.
I think so.
Um, but if it weren't for his vision, I wouldn't be sitting where I am.
Yeah.
Um, and as I said before, I knew absolutely nothing about college coaching. As it was in a weird twist of fate, as I got hired for the job here at CMS, there was a college coach in Northern Florida at the University of Northern Florida named Thomas Schrader, who was transitioning to the ATP.
Mm.
So it was almost like an exchange program, or he was going into a different role. So I called Thomas at UNF and said, "Hey, can you just give me like a day and a half on everything you know about college tennis? Just I'll come out, show me the drills, give me your playbook, your handbook, the whole thing." He said, "Sure, as long as you tell me everything about what it's like to be a director
Yeah.
of player services for the ATP." So we had this wonderful sort of 2-day exchange of information. And
Mm.
I felt a little more peace of mind showing up to my first day of work out here in Claremont. And he continues to work for the ATP and is absolutely killing it. So,
Mm.
kind of an interesting one there.
Yeah.
More to directly to your question about what was it? One thing that I
Well, just how you believe, so you start at ground zero, you've
yep,
picked up a few tips from your mate, you're getting started, but 10 years in, we talked earlier about observation and,
yeah.
and learning and then applying those lessons. So 10 years in, what had you learned? How were you better than you were on day one? And then how are you better now than 10 years ago?
Yeah. So I think the biggest mistake I made in the first 10 years was just overtraining. I mean,
Mm.
I came in and again without the experience, without a mentor to actually watch how it's done every day, I came in guns a-blazing. We're gonna outwork everybody. I love to play. We're gonna play a ton. We're just gonna get after this.
Hmm.
And, those were the days 20 years ago where there wasn't a dedicated strength and conditioning coach. So if it was happening because of my initiative.
Hmm.
So I was in a phase of, hey, we're gonna work every day harder than everybody else. When we do strength and conditioning, it's going to be 3 times harder than everybody else. And I think that was a mistake.
Hmm.
I think I learned early on that, hey, if you do that, by the middle of April, you've got some guys who are starting to wilt and go the other way. And you lose a little bit of passion in a long season.
Hmm.
So I think that was sort of the real learning lesson of the first 10 years was to pump the brakes a little bit on the training side and to lean into periodization and rest and trying to develop passion for training and competition. And there are lots of different ways to do that, but a lot of it is just picking the right moments to train and the right moments to compete.
Hmm.
So I think that was probably the lesson of the first 10 years. And then probably the last 10 years, I would say I've gotten a lot better at kind of customizing my training of players, taking a team environment and not insisting that it's one size fits all, but really kind of leaning into some individual work and meeting our student athletes where they are, understanding their games, understanding their mindsets, and really trying to tailor a training and practice and competitive schedule to them.
Hmm.
Um, and I also think I've just gotten a lot better at delegating. As I said in the early days, we were expected to be CEOs. We were expected to do everything. We weren't even necessarily expected to have an assistant coach. Now we're in
Hmm.
a position where we can sort of push some things off to other people who we trust. And I think I've gotten a lot better at just letting go. Um,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And I think that comes with experience, it comes with age, it comes with maturity.
Hmm. And Paul, you've continued to compete at a high level. We've been on the tennis court, not
Mhm.
enough, but love playing with you a couple of times, and you've really stayed dedicated to the craft of keeping yourself in shape to play at a high level. You've won a bunch of national championships through the years. You represented the USA in Ireland. We actually call it vets tennis, but what do you call it here? Um,
They call it
Seniors,
the ITF. Oh, they call it masters. They think
masters.
seniors is like a bad connotation, so we're masters
Masters, okay.
now.
Yeah, represented USA Masters team, I think, out in Portugal. I'm sure you'll be on many more teams in the years to come. But how has your commitment to continue to compete influenced how maybe you see the game and then therefore coach the game?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is modeling. I think it's just really important to
Mm,
model to my student athletes that I still really care about trying to stay in shape and compete and train and do something that I love. So I think at that level, it's just an important example for our student athletes.
mhm,
To your specific question, I would say every time I step out on the court in a tournament setting and get a chance to compete, I'm learning something new
yeah.
about, again, a tactical decision that I'm making in match or how to calm myself down in big moments or um, something I might have learned pre-match about preparing in a specific way. And
Mhm,
then the ability to take that and then apply it to your college tennis team is priceless, I would say. And if we don't get, I feel like if I don't get those opportunities, I don't learn how to pass them on to my team. Then it becomes coaching to me becomes a little more theoretical
mm,
because I'm actually not doing it. So I think that's really important. And I also feel like the reverse is absolutely true. So I'm in the middle of a very intense and heated competitive duel match, and I'm watching a player of mine or helping him navigate a tricky situation, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is something I need to do better when
mm.
I'm out competing."
Yeah.
So I really feel like it goes both ways. I feel like the coaching aspect makes me a better competitor and a better player, and the
Mhm,
playing aspect actually really helps my coaching. And when I'm not doing both or not helping the other part of that.
mm. Yeah, it's because I coached for 12 years, and when I went back to Ireland in 2016, I fell in love with playing and competing for myself again for the first time. I never did it when I was coaching, and I regret that. But playing a lot for 3 years at a good level, competitively, opens leagues, did the Masters. Sorry, I was about to call it vets again. Um, and going, wow, like I forgot how I feel in these moments. Like these matches are meaningless. Maybe there's I don't know, I could win 200 euro or something, but
Right.
you start, wow, I'm really nervous. Like my heart rate's coming up here and I always thought about, wow, if I went back to coaching, I would be so much more empathetic. Even though I remember, I kind of forgotten that from not doing it on a semi-regular basis during my coaching career, and probably became less empathetic for those moments and just your physiology and how it can get ramped up and so easily. And so, yeah, I guess the advice is coaches, if you get a chance to go out and compete, even if it's once a year, maybe take advantage of that because you'll learn something from it. So yeah, you're definitely leading the way there, Paul.
Well, I think it's so true. I really do. And I would encourage the coaches who are listening out there to at any level. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
level you are. You are going to learn so much through competing that you can translate to your craft and to your student athletes. And
Yeah.
in my case, I probably overestimate this effect, but I think it gives me a little bit more credibility with the guys who, especially as I get older, with the 18 to 22-year-old crowd, that almost 60-year-old coach is still out there trying to swing at it a little bit. So
Yeah, no, I would imagine it's a lot of fun for them. And yeah, I mean, just they think they have a big serve, and then you're standing 5 feet inside the baseline and taking everything early, and they're like, "Wow, maybe my serve isn't as good as I thought." But yeah, it's great that you're doing that, and I'm sure your players appreciate it. But Paul, yeah, you're as mentioned, you're on our ITA board of directors. We've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years talking about the threats to college tennis and what the ITA can do and where can we be of influence. But are you seeing any threats to Division 3 college tennis? And if so, do you have any advice on what coaches can do to insulate their programs from cancellation threats?
I mean, I'd be very hesitant to say that I don't see any threats, but I want to put that in context because I think Division 3 as a whole is in the safest possible place we could be in right now uh, in the world of college athletics, right?
Hmm.
I mean, with everything that's happening with the House settlement and pay for play, transfer portal, free agency at the Division 1 level, it sure seems like Division 3 is adhering to the amateur model that the NCAA had set forth, over 100 years ago.
Hmm.
So it feels safe, but with that said, I think Division 3 at least is facing some other challenges. We have a lot of institutions out there that are really enrollment challenged.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to have our eyes on right now is do we have enough student athletes who are interested in playing collegiate tennis? And are we building that base at the junior level and at the high school level so that we have a really solid feeder program that can get to the 400 sponsored collegiate tennis programs within Division 3? Um, and I think that's the main issue. I think most Division 3 institutions have a very, broad-based sports philosophy that we want to support, whether it's 15 or 24 different sports, with tennis usually being part of that mix. Um, so I don't think there's a threat there, but we have to continue to provide athletes who are eager and who want to play, and we have to continue to provide coaches who are qualified and also passionate about building their programs.
Hmm.
And I think my main message to most college coaches at this level would be, really try to make your program a focal point on campus. I think that's the most important thing. How can you set it apart from, the other 20 or so sports that are being sponsored on your particular campus? Is that through community service? Is that through showing up at campus events? Is that through just excellence out on the court? There's lots of different ways to do that, but is it making your program a pillar in the community? And in many cases, it's doing all of the above. But that's really the only way to, I think, ensure survival. Um, uh, and I think it's really important. If we're not doing that as coaches, if we're not saying, "Hey, how do I make my program stand out among these other 20 that are being offered on this campus," then our focus isn't in the right place.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me to my next question. So you and your wife have developed a not-for-profit foundation that helps physical education programs in your local elementary, supports high school tennis teams. Can you share a little bit about this foundation, how it came about, and then again, any advice to other college coaches who have an interest in maybe establishing something similar and how they might go about that?
Yeah. So yeah, we started a program, a 501(c)(3) not-for-profit called Tennis in Our Schools in 2013. And originally, this was a time where our kids were kind of going through elementary and middle school. And it was clear to us that there was really no tennis being offered in the local schools. So there was really no introduction. The only way you could be introduced to the sport would be through a city program or going to one of the clubs in the area. And we thought it was really important for that first introduction, the first touch with the sport to be at the elementary school level. So that's where we started. We purchased a number of these miniature nets and foam balls and smaller rackets and all of
Mhm.
that, and we just endeavored to go into each of the elementary schools in our community and offer PE classes where kids could learn how to play tennis, and we train them, or after school programs. Um, and the way we funded this was we run three adult and family level one USTA national championships. So we would solicit sponsorships for these events, and we take all of the sponsorship dollars and pour it into this foundation.
Mm.
So a pretty simple model. And after a while, it started to grow after a couple of years. So we hired someone who could do that work for us, who wanted to go in and do the after school and PE programs. And then what we observed was that there was kind of a disconnect between what we were offering to the kids in the elementary school and then how they could then latch on to a real passion for the sport. Like where next? There wasn't the appropriate city program. The club transition wasn't always the smoothest. So we completely pivoted and changed directions and recognized that at the high school level, where Kathy, my wife, had started to coach, there was a real need in the underserved communities for these programs, that they had kids who really wanted to play high school tennis, but they just didn't have the equipment because nobody could afford it. Nobody could afford rackets or uniforms or balls, or in some cases like nets for their courts.
Yeah.
So we just said, listen, this is going to be easier for us to implement. We can raise the money and we can get the equipment to the schools. That's not a problem. And it doesn't have the labor intensive piece of having to actually go in and train kids and then worry about whether they're ever going to play tennis again. So we pivoted to that model, and it's been incredibly successful. We've helped, I think, over, I don't know, 300 or 400 different programs in Southern California.
Wow.
We've raised about $80,000, and we have sponsors who really believe in the concept. We have players who play our tournaments who really believe in the concept.
Mm.
And it's incredibly rewarding to see a high school program that literally can't afford anything to send us a photo 2 weeks later after we provided something for them, with these kids smiling with new rackets and new uniforms
Yeah,
and being able to play. So
that's
yeah,
incredible.
and the second part of your question, how do you do it? I mean, this was really simple to implement, and it just sort of, it was a spark that kind of hit both of us. And I'm
Hmm.
reminded, of the Arthur Ashe quote where he says, start where you are, use what you have, do
Mm.
what you can. We can all apply that, right? We
Yeah.
all we all have something we can give. Figure out what that is and what you have a passion for, and then go use it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Paul, let's jump into some rapid fire questions. What is your favorite drill to do with your team?
I don't know how rapid fire this is going to be, but
Okay. I just asked the questions quickly.
yeah. So I think I've done four new ones this year, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And one, and I like just kind of creating drills from scratch and trying them and seeing if they work. So I've been a big fan of this Argentinian football coach, Marcelo Bielsa. He's the head coach for the Uruguayan men's soccer team.
Hmm.
And one of my teams that I follow is Leeds United. He was the manager there for a couple of years. So he does a drill in football where he puts all of his players on the pitch, and for 60 minutes he has coaches on the sidelines with multiple balls, and he doesn't let anybody stop for an hour.
Mm.
They keep playing. A ball goes out of play, they throw another ball in, they keep playing, and the players nicknamed that drill Murder Ball.
Mm.
So I thought, this sounds great. And I know there's got to be an application for tennis.
Yeah.
So I took my team to Argentina in January, and I knew we were going to get to play some clay court tennis down there. And I thought, this is going to be perfect, like the perfect ode to Bielsa to go to Argentina and basically to take his drill from soccer and apply it to tennis. So what we do is we put two guys on the court, one on either side, a coach on either side with a number of balls, and then we have their teammates split evenly, rooting for one player on each side. And we basically start a backcourt rally with a coach feed, but it's a really hard first feed. And then they play out the point, and as soon as the ball goes out of play, the coach on the other side of the net fires another really hard feed. And we play to 11, and it's just nonstop running back and forth.
Mm.
And the consequence is whichever player loses, he and his team have to run a series of like 17 sprints.
Mhm.
And our guys have really embraced it. They like it. So we do murder ball probably, I don't know, once or twice a week.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah.
So that was a rapid fire question and a super long answer. So
No, that's a great drill. Sounds like a lot of fun. Is there a book that's had a big influence on your coaching career to date?
yeah, well, we've talked a lot about Wooden, and he continues to be a huge influence on me. I'd highly recommend Wooden on Leadership, and it's autobiographical. So he's John Wooden is the author, but it's written with I think Steve Jameson, and it's just an incredible book on leadership. Very practical, very simple.
Hmm.
Highly recommended to any tennis coach out there. One other book that I love is a book that was written about 8 years ago by Sam Walker, and it's called The Captain Class. You may have heard of that. And it's really about leadership at the peer level. So I tend to give it to my student athlete leaders every year. And it's just the attributes and skills of the best captains across all sports in the history of sports. So this book kind of looks at the greatest teams of all time, whether it's the All Blacks from New Zealand or the Boston Celtics of the late 50s and early 60s, across all sports, and the reason for their success. And it's the thesis is that it's not the coach or the general manager or necessarily the personnel, but it's actually the captain that made the difference.
Hmm.
One player who impacted everybody else in this extraordinary way. So I think that's a really powerful leadership book, and one that will resonate with your athletes.
Right. Best format for Division 3 tennis.
This is a gotcha question.
It's sorry, before you answer, I'll say, Paul, every Division 3 coach I have a conversation with, they got some permutation, right? It's like we
Yeah.
want the 8 game, but we like the no ad, or we want, one set but a tiebreak for the third, or there's some combination that everybody has their own personal favorite. What's your personal favorite?
Well, this is going to fall in a different category. We're going to go back to what 2015 and the 5+1 format. So
Mhm.
for anybody out there who's not familiar with 5+1, we put one doubles team out on the court, and they play best of 3 sets. And we put five singles players in order of strength on the court as well. So you've got 6 matches going. The doubles counts for 2 points. The singles counts for one. It's a 7 point format. Everybody plays at the same time. You play best of three, Everything else follows college tennis, and it's this extraordinary experience of a lot happening at the same time. And it's relatively quick. I mean, most matches are under 2 hours, in the hour and a half to 2 hour range. And I feel like one of our problems in college tennis right now is that break between the doubles sets and the singles, where it doesn't really feel like halftime at a soccer match or a basketball game or something like that. It just feels
Mm,
like a break that's hard to restart from.
mm,
I think from a spectator point of view, and the beauty of simultaneous is that, and this 5+1 format is it's all happening at the same time. And it reintroduces sort of the tactical element to setting a lineup as a coach too. So for my doubles team, I can pick my number one singles player and my number eight singles player if I felt like they create a great doubles team and I could get 2 points from them. Or I could pick my two best doubles players that might be my six and seven singles players. So
mhm.
there's all sorts of tactical iterations there that I think make it really exciting on the coaching side. It goes quick, it's easily understandable, easily explainable to someone in the crowd, and a lot of fun. So we've done it a few times in our past, and I think it's the best by a long shot.
Mm. All right. Um, well, my next question, maybe you'd give the same answer, but one rule change that would make college tennis more engaging to the general sports fan.
Well, I would say 5+1, but
Hmm?
that's too easy, right? How about a rules of tennis change? Um, I'd like to see us eliminate the service toss that you can just catch.
Mm.
I'd
Yeah.
like to see every service toss go into the air and you have to hit it.
Yeah.
It's really small. It's really silly. I know people are shaking their heads right now, but I think if you throw something up in the air, you have to hit it,
Yeah.
especially when you have control over it. So that's one thing, but that's rules of tennis. I don't think that applies specifically to college tennis.
Hmm.
And the other thing, just I think, which would be fun at the college tennis level, and I give Mike Belmont at Carnegie Mellon the credit for this one, is he said we should have one timeout, one team timeout during the doubles phase of a dual match and the singles phase, where
Mm.
coach calls timeout. They gather all the players from all the courts together. You huddle. You're on a 60-second timer, and you just sort of reset.
Mm.
And I love that concept. And that's a great sort of way to take something from the team realm and apply it to a more individual sport, but to try to change things up.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite ATP player from the 90s?
Well, I'm going to be really obscure here, but you might know him. I'm not sure how many listeners will. Karsten Brosch from
Sure.
Munich, Germany. Was one of my very best friends when I was working for the tour, and far and away my favorite player. Very unorthodox lefty, a serve that no one would ever teach. Forehand and backhand that looked like they came from the club, but very, very crafty, smart, gritty player who could play on all surfaces. And the great thing about Karsten was, well, depending on how you look at it, he smoked a pack or two of cigarettes a day while he was playing the tour, and probably had a six-pack or two a day, and
Yeah.
still played at an unbelievably high level.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that most people don't know about Karsten, but is really interesting, in the mid 90s at the Australian Open, he was in the ATP office when Venus and Serena Williams walked in and claimed that they could beat any player outside the top 200 on the ATP tour. The
Hmm.
Williams sisters were teenagers at the time. Karsten happened to be, I think, 202 in the world and was overhearing this boast from Serena. And I took the opportunity as the ATP tour manager on site in Melbourne to say, hey, we have the 202nd player in the world here. Why don't we see if we can arrange this out on the practice courts?
Hmm.
So 2 days later, after Karsten had played, I think 36 holes of golf, and had at least 2 packs of cigarettes, for sure, uh, uh, 6 beers or so, maybe more. He went out and he beat Serena 6-1 and Venus 6-2 on an outside practice court at Melbourne, with not too many members of the media having learned about that.
No, that's funny. And so what was Serena and Venus's response to getting beaten up by him?
They didn't make that boast any further.
No, okay.
Yeah, I think it gave them a little more respect for the depth and quality
Yeah.
of let's say professional tennis overall.
Yeah, it's a name I haven't heard in a long time, but yeah, I absolutely remember him
It was great. I was reunited with him summer before last at the ITF World Championships in Portugal. He was representing Germany. I was on the USA team, so it was
yeah,
great. I hadn't seen him in 20 years, and
yeah,
he's exactly the same as he was then.
still smoking like a chimney.
Still smoking, still playing great tennis. Yep.
Okay. All right. Number one longevity tip to be able to keep up with your team on the courts as you age.
I think we covered some of this already, but just get out there.
Yeah.
Just just engage yourself. I remember when I first took this job, Sean Mimey was with me at the ATP, and I asked him if he would come out and be my assistant my first year because I didn't know what I was doing. And Sean agreed to come out, spent the first year with me. Now, of course, he's the head coach at Michigan. And Sean looked at me and he said, listen, you don't want to be that coach who walks around the court with his arms folded. And that has stuck with me forever. And to this day, I just make it a habit every practice, every training to try to get out there and do as much as I can with my athletes. And again, I'm 21 years older than I was when I started this, but if I'm not out in an active feeding drill, I'm out doing live ball stuff. And
Mhm.
I just think it's important. And it doesn't matter your ability level. I feel like your student athletes need to see you do that if you can do it, and it keeps you young, it keeps you healthy.
Yeah. We're coming towards the end of, I guess, the college season now, but what is one piece of advice you'd have for a head coach who's having a very rough season?
Mm. Um, I think what I would say is it's really important to reset uh, at at certain points, at certain data points during the season,
Mm.
and sort of take stock of where you are. We've had a lot of success here, but we've also had a couple really tumultuous, turmoil-filled, challenging seasons as well. And in those moments, I think it's really important just to stop, take a deep breath, and say, okay, where are we right now? And can this be the first moment of the rest of our season?
Mm.
So not not sort of looking backwards and saying, hey, this has been an awful experience. We thought we were going to be great, and we're having a horrible season, but instead saying, here's where we are today. Let's see if we can be better by next week. Let's see if we can be better in another month. So just kind of that constant fence posting throughout the season, and setting new and smaller goals to motivate yourself to do a little bit better. And as we talked about before, there's so many other ways to measure success. We're wrapped up in this results-oriented world, but what kind of an experience am I helping my student athletes to have?
Yeah.
And that can happen in a season filled with a lot of losses. You can give them one of the best experiences possible.
Hmm.
So that would be my advice, is this constant sort of resetting and refocusing and recalibrating, and then kind of pushing forward from there.
And last question, Paul, what's
Yeah.
one thing you hope your players have learned from you by the time they graduate from your program?
We do, like, like a lot of corporations, we do a vision statement, we do a mission statement. So our vision statement is exceptional excellence. We want to be exceptional on our college campus. We want to be exceptional in the world of Division III tennis. We want to be exceptional in the world of college tennis, and we're constantly striving to do that. So we try to keep that vision front of mind for our student athletes, and that really doesn't change so much over time. But we also do a mission statement too, and that's what we try to do each day to sort of achieve that vision. And our mission is about character first, advantageous preparation, and thriving on competition. So we focus on those three words: character, preparation, competition. Um, if there's anything that my student athletes would take away from me, I hope it's the character piece. I hope they look at this as a program where we've done things the right way, and that we focused on doing the right thing by ourselves and by our opponents and everybody we come in contact with. Um, but all three things are really important to me. I love to compete. I love to try to prepare to be our best, and doing it the right way is really important to me.
Good. Well, Paul, this has been a pleasure and a joy. I knew it would be. Looking forward to getting it out to our coaches, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate being on. Thanks for all the support that you give collegiate tennis, and we feel really well taken care of at the Division III, Division II small college tennis as well.
Great. Thank you, Paul.